The laughter hit first, sharp, loud, echoing across the rooftop like it had been waiting for him. Look who finally showed up. The broke kid. Andre Miller didn't stop walking. A few people turned. Most didn't. Some smirked into their drinks. Others lifted their phones, already recording. No one said a word to stop it. Ryan stepped forward, holding the mic like a weapon. "Man, you still wearing thrift store coats?" he said, grinning. 20 years and nothing changed. The crowd chuckled, soft, uneasy, but they didn't push back. Andre just stood there, calm, straight, hands in his pockets, like none of it touched him, like he had already lived through worse. A server nearly dropped a tray behind him. Andre caught it without even looking, steadying the man with a quiet, "You're good." Then he kept walking, right into the middle of the room that didn't want him there. That's when someone noticed it, just for a second. A sleek black key in his hand, too polished, too precise to belong to a man they just called broke. And then, a low sound, distant, rhythmic, thump. The glass walls trembled slightly. The laughter faded, because what they thought was a joke was about to cost them everything. The rooftop bar floated above downtown Houston like it belonged to a different world. One made of glass, gold light, and people who never worried about tomorrow. Music from the early 2000s pulsed through hidden speakers, a familiar rhythm wrapped in nostalgia. Laughter rose and fell like waves. Glasses clinked. Someone shouted a name across the room, followed by cheers that sounded a little too loud, a little too rehearsed. Near the entrance, a pair of double-glass doors slid open with a soft hiss. For a moment, no one noticed. Andre Miller stepped inside quietly, like a man who had learned long ago how to enter rooms without drawing attention. His coat was simple, dark, worn at the cuffs, the kind of thing you could buy second-hand if you looked hard enough. His shoes were clean, but not new. Nothing about him matched the polished glow of the place, but he stood straight. That was the first thing anyone who really looked would notice. Not stiff, not defensive, just steady, like he had nothing to prove. A few heads turned, slowly at first. Recognition didn't hit all at once. It moved across the room in pieces, one face narrowing, another tilting, a whisper here, a laugh there. And then it landed. "Oh, damn!" A voice cut through the music, loud enough to bend attention. "Look who finally made it. Barely." The words came from the center of the room, where the crowd was thickest. Ryan Cole stood there with a drink in his hand, leaning back like the night belonged to him. His smile spread slowly, the kind that waited for an audience before it fully showed itself. People followed his gaze. They found Andre. A few chuckles broke loose. Not loud yet, testing the air. Ryan lifted his glass slightly, like he was toasting something invisible. "Man, Andre Miller, thought you'd still be catching the bus somewhere." The laughter came easier this time. Not everyone joined in, but enough did. Enough to make it feel like a room turning its back all at once. "Broke kid made it to the rooftop," someone muttered from near the bar. "Must have taken him 20 years, another voice added. Andre didn't move. He stood just inside the doorway, letting the noise pass through him like wind through an open space. His eyes moved across the room, not searching, not shrinking, just taking it in. Faces he hadn't seen in 2 decades. Some older, some heavier, some trying too hard to look like they hadn't changed at all, and some looking away. A woman near the edge of the crowd lifted her drink to her lips without actually sipping. A man beside her checked his phone, though the screen stayed dark. Small movements, quiet escapes. No one said, "That's enough." No one said, "Leave him alone." The music kept playing. Ryan took a slow step forward, the grin still there. "What's wrong, man? You forget how to talk? Or you just soaking it all in?" Andre met his eyes. There was no anger there. That confused Ryan for half a second, just enough to make him talk louder to cover it. "Don't worry," Ryan said, sweeping his arm toward the room like he was welcoming a guest of honor. "We're real glad you came. Everybody loves a good comeback story." More laughter. Andre gave a small nod. Not agreement, not submission, just acknowledgement. "Good to see you too, Ryan," he said. His voice was calm, even. It didn't rise to meet the room. It didn't try to cut through it. It just existed. And somehow, that made the laughter feel thinner. Ryan blinked just once, then smirked again. "Yeah," he said, taking a sip of his drink. "We'll see about that." Andre stepped fully inside. The doors slid shut behind him, sealing him into the noise, the lights, the weight of every eye that pretended not to stare. As he moved forward, a server carrying a tray nearly brushed past him. The man stumbled slightly, and Andre reached out without thinking, steadying the tray before it tipped. "Got you," Andre said softly. The server nodded, surprised. "Appreciate it, man." Andre gave him a small smile and kept walking. At a nearby table, an older couple stood awkwardly, unsure where to sit. Andre paused, pulled out 2 chairs, and gestured gently. "Here," he said. "This spot's open." They thanked him a little too quickly, like they weren't sure if they were supposed to. He didn't wait for more. He just moved on. Behind the bar, a young bartender watched him for a moment longer than necessary. Something about the way Andre carried himself didn't line up with the picture the room was painting. Then Andre reached into his pocket. Not for show, not for attention, just to check something. A small object caught the light for a fraction of a second. A key, sleek and dark, unlike the standard plastic fobs most people carried. The bartender's eyes flickered to it, then back to Andre's face. A tiny pause. Gone as quickly as it came. Andre slipped the key back into his pocket and continued toward the center of the room. The laughter had settled now, replaced by something quieter. Not kinder, just waiting. Ryan watched him the whole way, like a man who had set something in motion and was eager to see how it played out. Andre stopped a few feet away from him, close enough now that the distance between past and present felt thin. For a second, neither of them spoke. The music thumped softly in the background. Glasses clinked. Someone near the edge of the room laughed at something unrelated, the sound cutting strangely through the tension. Ryan tilted his head. "So tell me something," he said. "You doing all right these days?" It sounded like a question. It wasn't. Andre held his gaze. "I'm doing just fine." Ryan's smile sharpened. "Yeah? Good. Real good." Another beat. Then, a low sound, distant at first. So faint it almost blended into the music. Andre's eyes shifted, just slightly, toward the glass walls that lined the edge of the rooftop. The sound came again. Thump. A few people near the windows turned their heads. "Y'all hear that?" someone asked. The music kept playing, but the rhythm outside didn't match it. Thump, thump, closer now, stronger. A glass on the bar trembled just enough to make a faint tapping sound against the wood. A napkin lifted at the corner, then settled again. Conversations faltered. Ryan frowned, glancing toward the windows. "What the hell?" The sound grew louder. Not a beat. Not music. Something else. Andre stood still, completely still, as if he had been expecting it. And for the first time since he walked through that door, the room wasn't laughing anymore. It was listening. Thump, thump, thump. Why was that sound getting closer? And why did Andre look like the only one who wasn't surprised? Thump. The sound pressed closer, heavier now, like it carried weight with it, like it belonged to something that didn't ask permission to arrive. But inside Andre's mind, the rooftop bar faded, the lights, the laughter, Ryan's voice. It all slipped backward, replaced by something older, something quieter, something that never really left. South Houston. The air there always felt thicker, like it held onto heat even after the sun went down. The apartment Andre grew up in sat on the third floor of a building that leaned just slightly to the left, as if it had gotten tired of standing straight years ago. The paint peeled off the walls in thin strips. The hallway lights flickered more often than they stayed on, and the smell, cleaning chemicals mixed with something stale, clung to everything. Andre used to count the steps from the front door to his room, not because he needed to, but because it gave him something to focus on. 7 steps, always 7. His mother, Denise Miller, worked nights at Memorial Hospital. She left just before sunset, tying her hair back in the kitchen mirror, her reflection framed by a crack that ran from the top corner of the glass down to the middle. "You lock that door behind me," she would say every time, her voice tired but steady. "I will," Andre always answered. And he did. Every night. He'd sit at the small table near the window, the one with the uneven leg that had to be propped up with folded cardboard. His books would be spread out in front of him, pages marked, corners bent. Homework first, then whatever he could get his hands on. Old computers from neighbors, broken laptops people left by the dumpster. He'd carry them upstairs like they were treasure, set them on the table, and take them apart piece by piece. He didn't have a teacher for that part. Just patience and curiosity. Sometimes Mrs. Alvarez from down the hall would knock softly on the door. She'd hold out a small box with a flickering screen or a keyboard that only worked if you pressed the keys just right. "You think you can fix this?" she'd ask. Andre would take, nodding. "I'll try." He never asked for money. Didn't expect it. When he returned something working again, the look on their faces, that was enough. "You're gonna be something one day," Mrs. Alvarez told him once, her voice thick with belief. Andre had smiled, but he didn't answer, because he already knew what people at school thought he was going to be. Nothing. The memory shifted. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Lockers lined the hallway. Metal doors dented and scratched from years of use. The floor smelled like wax and old sneakers. Andre stood at his locker, turning the dial slowly, careful not to draw attention. He had learned that too. Don't be loud. Don't be noticeable. Don't give them a reason. The click of the lock sounded louder than it should have. He opened the door and froze. A newspaper clipping had been taped across the inside. His face stared back at him, smiling awkwardly, holding a certificate. The headline above it read, "Local Student Wins Tech Fair." For one brief moment, something warm flickered in his chest. Then his eyes dropped. Across the photo, written in thick black marker, "Still broke." The ink cut through the image, slashing across his face. Laughter broke out behind him. Andre didn't turn around. He didn't need to. He knew the voices. Ryan Cole's laugh came first. Sharp, confident, like it always had a place to land. "Man, look at that," Ryan said, stepping closer. "You famous now, huh?" Kyle's voice followed, lower, eager. "Yeah, real impressive. Still wearing the same shoes, though. More laughter. A teacher walked past the end of the hallway, slowed just enough to glance, then kept going. Andre reached up. His fingers peeled the paper slowly from the metal, careful not to tear it. He folded it once, then again, and slid it into his backpack. No words, no reaction. The hallway noise swelled around him like it hadn't just happened. Ryan clapped him lightly on the shoulder as he passed. "Don't worry, man," he said. "We'll keep you humble." Andre closed his locker. 7 steps. That's what it took to get from that hallway to the exit. He counted them in his head as he walked. 1, 2, 3. By the time he reached 7, the laughter was behind him. But it didn't stay there. It never did. Another memory surfaced, sharper this time. Rain tapping against the apartment window. The sound uneven, like it couldn't decide how hard it wanted to fall. Andre sat at the table again. Older now, shoulders a little broader, eyes a little more tired. A kid from downstairs, maybe 10 years old, sat across from him, staring at a math worksheet like it was written in another language. "I don't get it," the kid muttered, frustration creeping into his voice. Andre leaned forward, pointing gently. "You see this part right here? You're not doing it wrong. You're just skipping a step." The kid frowned. "Which step?" Andre smiled, patient. "The one nobody told you about yet." He picked up a pencil and walked him through it slowly, step by step. The kid's face changed when it clicked, confusion melting into understanding. "Oh," he said, almost laughing. "That's it?" "That's it," Andre replied. The kid grinned. "You're good at this, man." Andre shrugged. "Just been doing it a while." Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, the light flickered once, then steadied. And for a moment, the world felt quiet, safe. The memory faded. The rooftop came rushing back. Lights, music, voices, and that sound. Thump, closer now, stronger. Andre stood where he was. The weight of those years settled somewhere deep inside him. Not heavy, not crushing, just present. Ryan was still talking, still trying to pull the room back into laughter. "Probably just some news chopper," he said, waving a hand like it didn't matter. "Y'all know how this city is." A few people nodded, eager to believe something simple, something easy. But the bartender near the counter wasn't convinced. He leaned slightly, trying to catch a glimpse through the glass. "What news chopper flies that low?" he muttered under his breath. The older couple Andre had helped earlier sat quietly, hands folded. The woman glanced toward him, something like recognition flickering in her eyes. Not of who he was, but of what he carried. Years of being unseen. Years of being told where he belonged. Andre adjusted his sleeve slightly, the motion small, controlled. He didn't look at the windows. He didn't look at the door. He just stood there, steady as ever. Like the sound outside was exactly where it was supposed to be. And inside that room, inside all those eyes that had already decided who he was, something began to shift. Not fully, not yet, but enough to make the air feel different. Thump, thump, thump. What was about to arrive? And why did it feel like Andre had been waiting for it his entire life? The sound pressed harder against the building now, no longer distant, no longer ignorable. The glass panels along the rooftop trembled ever so slightly, a faint vibration that made the ice in people's drinks clink against the sides of their glasses. But Ryan wasn't ready to lose the room. Not tonight. Not when everything had gone exactly the way he planned. He lifted his drink again, louder this time, forcing a laugh that cut through the tension. "Relax, y'all. It's Houston. Probably just somebody rich flying over traffic. A few people chuckled, grateful for something familiar to hold on to. Normal. That's what they wanted. Ryan stepped closer to Andre, lowering his voice just enough to feel personal, but still loud enough for the people nearby to hear every word. "You really showed up, huh?" he said, smirking. "Didn't think you had it in you." Andre met his eyes again, calm as ever. "You invited me." Ryan let out a short laugh, shaking his head. Yeah, I did." He turned slightly, addressing the crowd now. "See, I told Kyle. If we're doing 20 years, we gotta do it right. Bring everybody back." He paused, letting the moment stretch. "Everybody," he repeated, slower this time, his eyes sliding back to Andre. The implication hung in the air. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned in, sensing something about to unfold. Ryan took another step back, lifting his hands like he was hosting a show. "Man, you know how many times we talked about you over the years?" he said, "wondering where you ended up." A voice from the crowd called out, "Probably fixing computers somewhere." Laughter followed. Ryan grinned wider. "Yeah, something like that. Maybe still charging folks $20 to reboot their laptops." More laughter. Andre didn't react. Not to the words, not to the tone. He stood there steady, like the noise didn't quite reach him the way everyone expected it to. And that started to bother Ryan. Just a little. He circled slightly, like he was trying to find the right angle to get a reaction. "You ever think about coming back before this?" he asked. "Or you just figured you wouldn't fit in anymore?" Andre's answer came without hesitation. "I never had a problem fitting in." The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. A few people near the edge of the group glanced at each other, unsure why that felt different. Ryan caught it too. That tiny shift. He didn't like it. So he pushed harder. "Man, come on," Ryan said, clapping his hands once, sharp and quick. "Let's be real. You remember how it was. This place, these people, that wasn't your world." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice again. "Still isn't." The music in the background seemed to fade, or maybe people just stopped hearing it. Andre held his gaze. "You might be right," he said quietly. Ryan blinked, thrown off for half a second. Then Andre added, just as calm, "But I didn't come here for the room." That landed differently. Not like a challenge, not like a defense, just a statement. Ryan straightened, forcing a chuckle. "Yeah? Then what did you come for?" Andre didn't answer right away. His eyes moved briefly toward the far end of the rooftop, the glass wall, the skyline beyond it, the dark stretch of sky where that sound was coming from. Then back to Ryan. "To see who hasn't changed," he said. Silence. Not full silence, but enough. Enough to make the people closest to them stop smiling. Ryan's jaw tightened for a fraction of a second before he laughed again, louder this time, sharper. "Oh, we haven't changed," he said. "We just got better at winning." A few of his friends nodded quickly, eager to keep the energy on his side. Kyle stepped up beside him, raising his glass. "That's right. Some of us figured things out, built something real." His eyes flicked toward Andre. "Some of us didn't." There it was again. The line, the division, us and him. Andre let the words pass. Behind the bar, the young bartender wiped down the counter slowly, his attention drifting back to Andre again. Something didn't sit right. Not the way Andre spoke, not the way he stood, not the way he didn't flinch. He leaned toward a coworker. "You know that guy?" he asked quietly. The coworker shrugged. Nah, just somebody from their class, I guess. The bartender frowned slightly, glancing toward the door, then back to Andre. Something felt off. Ryan lifted his drink again, raising his voice to pull the whole room back in. All right. Since we got our special guest here, we might as well make this interesting. The word special carried just enough edge to draw a few uneasy looks. He stepped back toward the small stage area where a microphone stood waiting. Y'all remember how we used to do awards? He said. End of the year, senior stuff? A few people laughed, recognizing the setup. Oh no, someone muttered. Ryan grinned. Yeah, oh yes. He grabbed the microphone, tapping it twice. The sound popped through the speakers, louder than it needed to be. Let's have a little fun, he said. Andre watched him, expression unchanged. The sound outside grew louder again. Thump, closer now. The chandelier lights above flickered slightly, barely noticeable unless you were already paying attention. A woman near the window turned, pressing her hand lightly against the glass. That's not normal, she said under her breath. But no one answered her. All eyes were on Ryan and Andre. The stage lights flicked on, casting a brighter glow across the center of the room. Shadows shifted, stretching longer across the floor. Ryan pointed the microphone toward Andre, smiling like he had already won something. Stick around, man, he said. This part's for you. Andre didn't move, didn't argue, didn't leave. He simply nodded once, slow and deliberate. I'm not going anywhere, he said. And for the first time since the laughter started, a few people in that room felt something they couldn't quite name. Not fear, not yet, but something close. Because whatever was coming, Andre wasn't surprised by it, and that meant they should be. Thump, thump, thump. If this night was meant to humiliate Andre, why did it suddenly feel like something much bigger was about to happen? The sound rolled across the rooftop again, heavier now, like it carried pressure with it. A few people near the windows turned fully this time, their conversations fading mid-sentence. Someone reached for their phone, not to record, but to check if anyone else was hearing it too. But Ryan didn't look. He refused to. Because if he looked, even for a second, it would mean something else had his attention. And tonight, that wasn't allowed. Tonight was his. He tapped the microphone again, forcing the room back into focus. All right, let's get this going, he said, flashing that same confident grin. 20 years, y'all. We've all changed a lot, or at least some of us have. A ripple of laughter followed. Controlled. Expected. Ryan scanned the crowd like a man measuring reactions, making sure the room was still his to command. Then his eyes landed on Andre again. Still calm, still unmoved. That steadiness. It didn't fit the script Ryan had written in his head. So he doubled down. Before we get into anything serious, Ryan continued, pacing slowly across the small stage, I figured we'd do something fun. Take it back to high school. You remember those end-of-year awards? Groans and chuckles mixed together. Oh no. Man, don't start. Ryan laughed, enjoying it. Come on. Y'all loved those. Most likely to succeed. Class clown, all that good stuff. He picked up a stack of papers from a small table beside the stage. Cheap cardstock, printed quick, improvised, or maybe planned. Andre noticed the way the corners were still perfectly aligned, the edges too clean for something thrown together last minute. Ryan had been thinking about this for a while. Let's warm up, Ryan said, flipping through the pages. Nothing crazy. He called out a few names, harmless ones at first. Most likely to still be late. A woman near the bar laughed, raising her hands in surrender as people clapped. Best hair, still undefeated. Another man stood up, playing along, turning his head side to side for the crowd. The room loosened again. Laughter came easier, relief spread. This was safe, this was normal. Ryan let it build just enough. Then he slowed down. His fingers paused on the next card. The air shifted before he even spoke. And now, he said, dragging the moment out just a little longer than necessary, we got a special one. A few people leaned in. Some already knew, or thought they did. Ryan looked directly at Andre, didn't blink. Most likely, he began, his voice dipping lower, to still be broke. The words landed like something dropped from a height. For a second, no one reacted. Then the laughter came, louder than before, because it had somewhere to land now, because it had a target. Andre Miller. Ryan held up the card, reading the name like it was a punchline. Give it up for Andre Miller! Claps followed, some real, some forced, some just people moving their hands because everyone else was. Phones lifted again, this time clearly recording. Andre stood where he was, the noise rolled over him. Didn't stick, didn't sink in. He took one step forward, then another. The path to the stage opened slowly, people shifting just enough to let him pass. Some avoided eye contact. Others stared too long. The bartender watched him closely now, wiping the same spot on the counter over and over without realizing it. Andre reached the edge of the stage. Ryan extended the card toward him, smile wide, waiting for something, anything, to break through that calm. Andre took it. His fingers brushed the edge of the cheap paper, holding it steady. He looked at it for a moment. Most likely still broke. Printed in bold, clean, deliberate. Then he looked up. Not at Ryan, at the room, at all of them. His expression didn't change, not anger, not embarrassment. Just presence. I appreciate it, he said. That was it. No sarcasm, no bite, just 4 simple words, and somehow that made the laughter stumble. Ryan blinked, caught off guard for half a second. That's it? He said, chuckling. No speech? No comeback? Andre gave a small shrug. You already said everything you wanted to say. That landed differently. A few people shifted in place. Ryan's smile tightened, but he forced it wider. Man, you always did know how to keep it short. Andre nodded once. Then he stepped off the stage. No rush, no hesitation, just walked back through the crowd the same way he came. The laughter didn't follow him this time. Not the same way. It thinned out, faded quicker than it should have. As he passed the bartender glanced down, just for a second, at Andre's hand. That same key, sleek, dark, not standard. His eyes narrowed slightly, then flicked up again. Andre caught the glance. Didn't react. Just slipped the key back into his pocket. At a nearby table, the older couple he had helped earlier watched him return. The woman leaned toward her husband, whispering something too quiet to hear. The man nodded slowly, eyes still on Andre. Back on stage, Ryan clapped his hands once, trying to pull the energy back together. All right, let's keep it moving, he said. Don't get soft on me now. But something had shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just enough. Enough for a few people to stop laughing so easily. Enough for the room to feel slightly off balance. Ryan felt it. And he hated it. So he reached for something sharper. He stepped off the stage, microphone still in hand, and walked straight toward Andre. The crowd parted again, this time slower, more uncertain. Ryan stopped just a few feet away. "You know," he said, his voice carrying through the speakers, "I gotta respect it." Andre looked up. "Showing up like this," Ryan continued, "takes guts." A pause, then, "But guts don't change reality." The words hung there, heavy, deliberate. A few people looked down. Others stared straight ahead, pretending not to hear. Andre didn't respond, didn't even blink, and that silence, that refusal to engage, it did something to Ryan, something he couldn't quite control, because this wasn't how it was supposed to go. Andre was supposed to react, to defend himself, to get angry, to give Ryan something to push against. But he didn't. And without that, Ryan had nothing solid to stand on. Outside, the sound grew louder again. Thump, thump, closer. The lights above flickered once more. This time, more people noticed. A man near the window stepped forward, squinting out into the dark sky. "That's not traffic," he said. The bartender set down his towel, moving closer to the edge of the bar. The older couple turned their chairs slightly. Ryan hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. Then he shook it off, raising the mic again, louder than before. "Don't get distracted," he said. "We're just getting started." But even as he said it, the room wasn't fully with him anymore, because whatever was coming was almost here. And Andre Miller, the man they had just laughed at, still looked like the only one who knew exactly what it was. Thump, thump, thump. If Andre was not reacting to the humiliation, was it because he knew the moment that would change everything was only seconds away? The sound didn't fade this time. It stayed, low, steady, pressing against the glass like a heartbeat that didn't belong to the room. But Ryan refused to lose control. He forced a grin, lifting the microphone again as if nothing had changed. All right. Y'all getting quiet on me now?" he said, scanning the crowd. "That's not how we used to do things." A few people laughed, weaker this time, nervous, uncertain. Ryan clapped once, sharp and loud. "Come on, let's wake it back up. We're just getting started." Andre stood near the edge of the crowd, the cheap award still in his hand. He hadn't set it down, hadn't crumpled it, hadn't reacted at all. He simply held it, like it didn't define him, like it never had. Ryan noticed that too, and it irritated him more than anything Andre could have said. "So here's what we gonna do," Ryan continued, pacing slowly, feeding off whatever energy he could still control. "We gonna take it up a notch, make it interesting." He pointed the mic toward the crowd. "Y'all remember how we used to tell stories? Senior year, prom night, all that good stuff?" A few voices answered back, half laughing. "Yeah." "Oh man, don't do this." Ryan grinned. "Oh, I'm doing it." He turned, locking eyes with Andre again. "You remember prom, Andre?" he asked. The room shifted instantly. Even the people who hadn't been there could feel it. The way the air tightened, the way some faces dropped just slightly, like they knew where this was going. Andre didn't answer. Ryan took a step closer. "I remember," he said, voice carrying easily through the speakers. "Man saved up all that money, got himself a nice little suit." He mimed straightening a jacket, exaggerating it just enough to get a few scattered laughs. "Navy blue, right?" Ryan continued. "Looked real clean for about, 10 minutes?" A couple of guys near the bar chuckled louder, leaning into it. Ryan's smile widened. Then, oops, he tipped an imaginary cup forward, slow and deliberate. Whole punch bowl down the front. A ripple of laughter spread again. Not as strong, but still there. Still enough. Andre stood still. The memory flashed through him, bright, sharp, like it had never dulled with time. The gym lights, the music, the way the red stain spread across the fabric, soaking through something he had worked months to afford. The way the room had gone quiet for half a second. Before the laughter came, Andre's fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the award in his hand. Barely noticeable, but it was there, the first crack. Ryan caught it and pushed harder. "Man walked out so fast," Ryan said, shaking his head like he was telling a funny story. "Didn't even try to stay. Couldn't handle it." He leaned in just a little, voice dropping. "Some people just ain't built for certain rooms." That landed heavier than the joke. A woman near the back crossed her arms, looking down. The older couple Andre had helped earlier exchanged a glance. The bartender stopped moving completely now, hands resting on the counter, eyes locked on the scene. Andre lifted his head slightly, not to challenge, not to argue, just present. Ryan exhaled through his nose, almost laughing at his own words. "But hey," he said, backing up again, raising his voice, "you showed up tonight. Gotta give you credit for that." He turned to the crowd. "Right? That's growth." A few people clapped. Out of habit, out of pressure. Not because they believed it. Andre finally spoke. His voice didn't rise, didn't compete. It just cut through the space because everything else had gone so quiet. "I remember that night," he said. The room stilled. Ryan smirked. "Oh yeah? What part?" Andre met his eyes. "The part where I left," he said. A pause. Then, "The part where I decided I wasn't coming back." The words settled differently than anything else that had been said so far. No anger, no bitterness, just truth. Ryan laughed again, but it came out sharper this time. "Well, look at you now," he said. "Back after all these years." Andre nodded once. "Yeah," he said, "I am." Another pause. The kind that stretches longer than people expect. Ryan shifted slightly, something in his expression tightening again. Because this still wasn't going the way it was supposed to. Andre wasn't playing along, wasn't breaking, wasn't giving him anything to tear into. And the room was starting to feel it, starting to see it, starting to question. The sound outside grew louder. Thump, thump, closer now. The windows rattled slightly, enough for a few people to turn fully toward them. "What is that?" someone asked, louder this time. Ryan glanced toward the glass, just for a second. That was all it took, that tiny break in control. Andre noticed it. Didn't react, but he noticed. The bartender stepped closer to the window, squinting into the dark sky beyond the city lights. His eyes widened slightly. "That's not traffic," he said again, louder now. A couple of people moved beside him, curiosity pulling them forward. Ryan turned back quickly, raising the mic again, louder than before. Hey, stay with me," he said. "We not done yet." But fewer people were listening now. The balance had shifted. Not fully. Not yet. But enough. Ryan felt it slipping. And he didn't know how to grab it back. So he reached for something sharper. He stepped down from the stage again, closing the distance between him and Andre. Close enough now that the crowd instinctively pulled back, forming a wider circle. Ryan lowered the mic slightly, his voice still carrying but more direct now. "You think you different now?" he asked. Andre didn't answer. Ryan's jaw tightened. "You walk in here like you don't remember who you were." "I remember," Andre said quietly. Ryan leaned in closer. "Then act like it." The words hung there. Heavy. Personal. The kind that didn't need volume to hit. Andre looked at him for a long moment. Then, he glanced just briefly toward the windows. The sound was right there now, right on top of them. Thump, thump, thump. The lights flickered again, this time longer. The music stuttered for half a second before catching itself. And outside, a bright beam of light swept across the glass. Someone gasped. The bartender took a step back. "That's a helicopter," he said, voice low but clear. Every head turned. Ryan turned too. He couldn't help it this time, and for the first time all night, Andre didn't look surprised. If the helicopter wasn't part of Ryan's plan, then whose moment was this about to become? The beam of light swept across the rooftop again, brighter this time, cutting through the glass like a blade. Outside, the skyline flickered in reflection, distorted by the movement of something descending from the sky. People moved instinctively toward the windows. Chairs scraped. Glasses were left half full on tables. Even the music seemed to shrink, fading into something distant and irrelevant. "What the hell is that?" someone whispered. "It's landing," another voice said, sharper now. Ryan stood frozen for half a second too long. That was all it took. The room felt it. That tiny crack in his control. He cleared his throat quickly, stepping forward, forcing a laugh that didn't quite land. All right. Y'all acting like you never seen a helicopter before," he said, waving it off. Somebody rich showing off. Happens all the time. But even as he spoke, his eyes kept flicking toward the glass. Because this wasn't normal, not this close, not this precise. The rooftop windows rattled again as the sound deepened. No longer just a thump, but a steady, powerful rotation that pressed against the air itself. Andre stood where he was, still, calm, watching the room instead of the sky, watching how people shifted, who leaned in, who stepped back, who suddenly didn't want to be standing too close to Ryan anymore. At the bar, the young bartender moved closer to the edge, pressing one hand lightly against the glass. The vibration hummed through it. "That's not passing by," he said quietly. "That's landing somewhere." A man beside him squinted out into the darkness. "On what?" "There's no landing pad here." But there was, behind the building, a small private lawn area, rarely used, mostly decorative. No one thought about it. Until now. The beam of light swept downward again, illuminating the edge of the grass below. The movement was controlled, intentional, not random, not accidental. Ryan took a step back without realizing it. Kyle noticed, leaning closer. "You know anything about this?" he asked under his breath. Ryan shook his head, just slightly. "No," he muttered. That word, small as it was, felt bigger than anything he had said all night. Because for the first time, Ryan Cole didn't have an answer. Across the room, Andre shifted his weight just enough to slide the cheap award from one hand to the other. The paper bent slightly under his fingers, the bold words catching the light. "Most likely still broke." He looked at it for a moment, then folded it once, clean, precise, and slipped it into his coat pocket. The bartender saw that too, saw the way Andre handled it. Not angry, not careless, intentional, like it meant something, like it would matter later. His eyes dropped again, almost unconsciously, to Andre's other hand. The key. It wasn't visible now, tucked away, but he remembered it, the shape, the finish. He had seen something like that before, not in person, online, luxury transport systems, private fleet access, encrypted ignition. Not something you carried unless you belonged to something bigger than this room. The bartender frowned, his mind trying to catch up to what his eyes were telling him. "Hey," he said quietly to the coworker beside him. "You ever seen a key like that?" The coworker shrugged. "Man, I barely got a car that starts half the time." But the bartender didn't laugh. He kept watching Andre, because the pieces didn't line up. Not with the jokes, not with the way Ryan was talking, not with the way Andre carried himself. Something didn't fit, and it was getting harder to ignore. Outside, the roar softened slightly, not because it was leaving, but because it was settling, positioning. The beam of light steadied, no longer sweeping, but fixed on a single point beyond the glass. Someone near the window gasped. "It's touching down!" More people crowded closer. Phones came out again, but this time not for laughs, for something else. Curiosity, shock. Ryan took another step back, lowering the microphone slightly. His voice didn't carry the same confidence now. "All right. Okay, so somebody's making an entrance," he said, trying to recover. "Not gonna lie, that's kinda extra." A few people chuckled weakly, but their eyes weren't on him anymore. They were on the glass, on the light, on whatever was arriving. Andre finally turned his head, just slightly, not rushing, not reacting like everyone else, just acknowledging. The bartender caught that too. The timing, the calm, the way Andre moved like this wasn't unexpected, like it was part of something already in motion. "Yo," the bartender muttered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. That man knew. No one answered him, because the realization was spreading. Slow, uneven, but undeniable. Back near the stage, Ryan straightened his jacket, forcing himself to step forward again. He lifted the microphone, tapping it once more. "Hey," he called out, louder than necessary. "Eyes up here, y'all. Don't get distracted. We still got more to do." But fewer people turned back, and the ones who didn't look at him the same way. Kyle shifted beside him, lowering his voice. "Maybe we should just—" "Don't," Ryan snapped quietly. "Not now." He forced another smile, while raising the mic again. "Like I said," he continued, voice tighter now, "we just getting started." Andre looked at him, really looked this time. Not with challenge, not with anger, but with something else. Something steady, something patient. Like a man watching the final seconds tick down on something he already understood. The room felt smaller suddenly. Not physically, but in the way attention narrowed. In the way everything that mattered seemed to be happening just beyond the glass. The roar softened further. The vibration eased. And then, silence. Not complete, but close enough. Close enough that people could hear their own breathing. Close enough that the absence of that sound felt louder than the sound itself. Someone near the window whispered, "It's here." No one laughed. No one moved. Ryan lowered the microphone slowly, his hand no longer steady. Andre slipped his hands into his coat pockets, relaxed, composed. Exactly the same as when he walked in. But now, the room was starting to understand, starting to question, starting to see. And that small detail, the key, the calm, the timing, it wasn't small anymore. If the truth was already standing in the room, why did it take something from the sky for everyone to start seeing it? The silence stretched across the rooftop like something fragile, thin enough to break, heavy enough to feel in your chest. No one laughed. No one spoke. The helicopter's engine had softened into a low, controlled hum outside, steady and deliberate, like it wasn't going anywhere. Inside, the room held its breath. Ryan swallowed, adjusting his grip on the microphone. His fingers tightened slightly, the confidence from earlier slipping just enough to be noticed by anyone paying attention. He stepped forward again, forcing movement into the stillness. "All right," he said, voice louder than it needed to be. "That's cute, real cute." The word landed wrong. Even he seemed to hear it, but he kept going. "Somebody wanted to make an entrance," he added, shrugging like it didn't matter. "Good for them." A few people shifted, glancing back toward the windows. No one answered him. Ryan's smile tightened. He turned his attention back to Andre, like pulling the spotlight back was the only way to regain control. "Guess your timing's lucky tonight," Ryan said. "Whole room distracted. Took the heat off you for a second." Andre didn't respond. Didn't even look toward the glass. His focus stayed exactly where it had been. Steady, present, unshaken. That made it worse. Ryan took another step closer. "You think that changes anything?" he asked, lowering his voice but keeping it just loud enough for the room to hear. "Whatever's going on out there." Still no response. Ryan exhaled sharply through his nose. Then he said it, the line that shifted everything. "You still don't belong here." The words didn't come with a laugh this time. No joke, no performance, just plain, flat, real. The room reacted differently too, not with laughter, but with silence that felt heavier than before. A woman near the bar looked down at her drink. The older couple at the table didn't move at all. The bartender stood frozen, hands resting on the counter, eyes locked on Andre. Ryan stepped even closer, closing the space until it felt personal. "This place," he continued, gesturing around them. "These people. This is built on something, on success, on people who earned their spot." He leaned in slightly. "You can't fake that." Andre's jaw tightened. Barely, the smallest movement. But it was there, and Ryan saw it, so he pushed further. "You walk in here with that coat, those shoes, acting like you one of us," Ryan said, "but we both know the truth." A pause. Then, "People like you don't get here." The sentence hung in the air. No laughter followed. No agreement. Just the weight of it. Andre looked at him. Really looked this time. Not with anger, not with fear, but with something deeper, something older. Like he had heard that sentence in different forms his entire life. From hallways, from teachers who didn't say it out loud but showed it in how they looked past him, from strangers who made decisions before he ever spoke. And now, from Ryan, again. Andre took a slow breath, the kind that settles something inside you instead of stirring it up. "You're right about one thing," he said quietly. Ryan blinked. "What's that?" he asked. Andre held his gaze. "I didn't come from here." The words were simple, but they carried weight. Ryan let out a short laugh, relieved to have something to grab onto. "Exactly," he said. "So why pretend?" Andre shook his head slightly. "I'm not pretending," he said. Another pause, then, "I just stopped asking for permission." That landed differently. Not loud, not aggressive, but it shifted something. A man near the window turned back from the glass, his expression changing just slightly. The bartender exhaled slowly, like something had just clicked. Ryan's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then snapped back into place. "Man, you always did have a way with words," he said. "But words don't change facts." Andre didn't argue, didn't need to. Outside, a door opened. The sound cut through the silence. Metal on metal, clear, definite. Heads turned instantly. The beam of light shifted again, angling toward the rooftop entrance that led down to the lower level. Footsteps followed. Measured, controlled, not rushed, not hesitant. The kind of steps that don't ask where they're going. They already know. Inside the room, something shifted again. This time stronger. More undeniable. People near the entrance instinctively stepped back, clearing space without being told. Ryan turned his head toward the sound, his body following a second later. The microphone dropped slightly in his hand. For the first time all night, he wasn't leading, he was reacting. Andre stayed where he was, hands still in his coat pockets. Calm, unmoved. Like this moment was exactly where everything had been heading. The bartender leaned forward slightly, eyes fixed on the doorway. "Yo," he whispered. The older couple turned fully in their chairs now. The room held still, waiting, watching. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Then a shadow crossed the entrance, followed by another, and another. Figures in dark suits stepped into the light, their presence quiet but unmistakable. Professional, intentional. They scanned the room quickly, not confused, not curious, focused, looking for someone. The air changed again, not with noise, but with understanding. Ryan's throat tightened. Kyle took a half step back. No one laughed now, no one spoke, because whatever this was, it wasn't random, and it wasn't for show. One of the men stepped forward, his eyes moving across the room until they landed on Andre. Recognition, immediate, certain. He adjusted his jacket slightly and took another step forward. The room seemed to shrink around that movement. Every eye followed, every breath held. Andre didn't move, didn't react, didn't need to, because the moment everyone else was trying to understand, he had already been standing inside it. When the truth finally walks into the room, who does it recognize first? The man in the suit didn't hesitate. He moved through the room like the space had already been cleared for him, even though no one had said a word. His shoes made no sound against the polished floor, but every step carried weight, authority that didn't need to announce itself. Behind him, two others followed. Same posture, same focus. Not security in the obvious sense, but something sharper, intentional. They weren't scanning the room anymore. They had already found what they were looking for. Andre. The man stopped a few feet in front of him. For a moment, no one breathed. Ryan stood off to the side, microphone still in his hand, but forgotten now. His mouth opened slightly, like he was about to say something, anything, but nothing came out. The man adjusted his cuff once, a small, precise motion. Then he spoke. "Mr. Miller." The words were calm, respectful, final. They didn't echo like Ryan's voice had. They didn't need to. They landed exactly where they were meant to. The room shifted, not loudly, but completely. Andre met his gaze. "Evening," he said. Same tone, same calm, as if this was the most normal exchange in the world, as if none of what had just happened mattered. The man nodded slightly. "We've been waiting for you." A ripple moved through the crowd. Confusion first, then recognition. Slow, uneven, like pieces falling into place that no one had expected to fit together. Ryan let out a short, forced laugh, stepping forward again. All right, what is this?" he said, waving the microphone slightly like he could steer the moment back. "Y'all rehearsing something? This some kind of joke?" No one answered him, because the man didn't even look at him. His attention stayed on Andre. "The board's already assembled," he continued. "They asked me to come get you personally." That word, personally, hung in the air. The bartender's grip tightened on the edge of the counter. Bored, assembled, personally. Those weren't words that belonged to a joke. Ryan's smile flickered. He stepped closer, forcing himself into the conversation. "Hey, hold up," he said. "You got the wrong guy. This is Andre Miller." The man finally turned his head. Just slightly. Just enough to look at Ryan. And in that glance, there was no confusion, no hesitation, only clarity. "I'm aware," he said. Then he looked back at Andre. "Mr. Miller, your transport is ready." The word hit harder than anything else so far. Transport, not ride, not pickup, transport. Ryan blinked, his brain scrambling to catch up. "Transport?" he repeated, a half laugh stuck in his throat. "Man, what are you—" He stopped, because the bartender moved. Not forward, not dramatically. Just enough to shift his view through the glass. And what he saw made him take a step back. "Yo," he said, louder now, voice cutting through the silence. "That's not just any helicopter." Heads turned again, fully this time. No hesitation, no pretending it wasn't happening. Outside, under the steady beam of light, the helicopter sat on the lawn like it had always belonged there. Sleek, matte black, controlled. Not flashy, not loud anymore, just present. And on its side, silver lettering caught the light. Sharp, clean, deliberate. A name. The bartender leaned closer to the glass, squinting, reading it out loud without meaning to. Axiom. Digital systems. The words echoed into the room. A few people froze. Not everyone, but enough. Because some of them had heard that name before. On contracts, on news segments. On screens they paid attention to when it affected money. Real money. Ryan's throat went dry. He looked from the window, back to Andre, then back again. His mind refused to connect the two. It couldn't. It didn't make sense. So he laughed again, louder this time, sharper. "All right, okay," he said, raising his hands slightly. "Now I know this is staged. Y'all really went all out, huh? Helicopter, suits, the whole thing." No one joined him. Kyle didn't move. The older couple didn't move. The bartender didn't move. Because the joke wasn't landing anymore. Andre reached into his coat pocket slowly. Not rushed, not dramatic, just deliberate. He pulled out the folded paper Ryan had handed him earlier. The cheap award. Most likely still broke. He looked at it for a second. Then, without a word, he set it gently on the nearest table, right in the center, where everyone could see it. The paper lay flat, still, unchanged, but everything around it had shifted. Andre looked back at the man in the suit. "Let them finish," he said quietly. The man nodded once. Understood. No questions asked. Ryan stared at him. "You serious right now?" he said, voice cracking just slightly. "You think you can just, what, walk out of here like you somebody?" Andre turned his head. Slow, controlled, met his eyes. "I don't think anything," he said. Another pause, then, "I know." The room didn't react. It absorbed. Every word, every shift, every second. Because whatever they had been watching all night, it wasn't what they thought. And whatever was happening now was no longer something they could laugh at. Outside, the helicopter lights held steady. Inside, the silence grew heavier. And for the first time since Andre walked through that door, no one saw a broke kid. They just didn't fully understand yet what they were actually looking at. If Andre wasn't leaving yet, What was he waiting for everyone to finally realize? The room held still like a photograph that hadn't decided what it wanted to show yet. Every face carried the same question. Who is he? Not the version they remembered. Not the version they laughed at. Something else. Something they hadn't accounted for. Ryan shifted his weight, his confidence now a fragile thing, cracking in places he couldn't hide. He forced a laugh again, but this time it came out thinner, stretched. Man, this is crazy, he said, glancing between Andre and the men in suits. You really went all out for this little reunion, huh? No one echoed him. No one backed him up, because the room was no longer with him. It had moved, subtly, quietly, but completely. Andre stood where he was, hands still in his coat pockets, posture unchanged. The light from outside traced the outline of his shoulders, giving him a presence that felt larger than the space he occupied. The man in the suit stepped slightly to the side, giving Andre room, not out of hesitation but out of recognition. Respect. That detail didn't go unnoticed. Not by the bartender, not by the older couple, and not by the handful of people in the room who suddenly felt like they had missed something important years ago. Ryan took a step closer again, stubborn, clinging to what little control he thought he still had. All right, let's clear this up, he said, louder now, trying to reassert himself. You got some people, some ride, cool, but don't stand here acting like you something you're not. Andre finally moved, not toward the exit, not toward the helicopter, but toward the center of the room, toward the space Ryan had been controlling all night. The shift was subtle, but it drew every eye. Andre stopped a few feet from him, close enough now that there was no distance left to hide behind. I'm not acting, Andre said. The words were quiet, but they landed like something solid. Ryan scoffed, shaking his head. Man, I know you, he said. I know where you come from. I know what you had, and what you didn't. You don't just change that. Andre held his gaze. No, he said, you don't. A pause. Then, you build something else. The room absorbed that. A few people straightened slightly, as if they were hearing something they hadn't expected to matter. Ryan let out a sharp breath. Build what? He challenged. You think a helicopter makes you something? You think that name out there means you belong here? Andre didn't answer right away. He turned his head slightly toward the windows, toward the helicopter, toward the name now visible to everyone. Axiom Digital Systems. He looked back at Ryan. It's not about belonging, Andre said. It never was. Another pause. The kind that stretches just enough to make people lean in without realizing it. It's about what you build when nobody's watching, he added. The bartender swallowed hard, because now it was starting to make sense. Pieces connecting, the key, the calm, the way those men had walked in, not searching, but certain. Ryan laughed again, but there was nothing behind it now. Man, you talking in circles, he said. Say what you mean. Andre studied him for a moment. Not with anger, not with pride, just clarity. You spent 20 years thinking about me as the same person, Andre said. Same place, same situation. Ryan opened his mouth to respond, but Andre kept going. I spent those same 20 years working, he said, learning, building. Each word landed slower, heavier, more deliberate. I didn't come back to prove anything to you, Andre continued. I came back because this place was part of my story. The room shifted again, not dramatically, but enough for people to start seeing themselves in it. The silence, the laughter, the moments they didn't speak up. Ryan's expression hardened, but the cracks were visible now. "Then why stand here?" he snapped. "Why not just leave with your little show outside?" Andre glanced briefly at the folded award on the table. "Because you're not done," he said. Ryan froze. The words hit him before he understood them. "What?" he asked. Andre met his eyes. "You invited me here for a reason," he said. "You wanted something." Ryan's jaw tightened. The truth of that sat uncomfortably in the room. Andre continued, his voice steady. "So go ahead," he said. "Finish it." The challenge wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Because now, everyone was watching Ryan, not Andre. Ryan looked around, searching for support, for laughter, for anything to hold on to. But the faces he found weren't the same. They weren't smiling the way they had before. They weren't leaning in. They were waiting, watching, judging. The balance had shifted, and Ryan could feel it slipping through his hands. Outside, the helicopter lights flickered once, then steadied again. Inside, the silence grew sharper. Ryan swallowed, gripping the microphone tighter. He had one move left, one way to take the room back, or lose it completely. Andre didn't move, didn't speak, didn't react. He just stood there, waiting, because whatever happened next wouldn't just reveal who he was, it would reveal everyone else too. When the moment finally forces the truth out, who in that room is ready to face what they've been part of all along? Ryan stood there, microphone in hand, the weight of every eye in the room pressing down on him. For the first time all night, he didn't look like the one in control. He looked like someone being measured, judged, and found uncertain. His fingers tightened around the mic, knuckles whitening slightly. He cleared his throat, trying to pull something, anything, together. "All right," he said, voice rougher now. "You want to play it like that?" No one answered, because this wasn't a game anymore. Ryan forced a laugh, but it came out hollow. "You keep talking like you built something," he continued, pacing slowly like he was trying to remember how to own the space. "Like you came back here as, what? Some kind of big shot?" He gestured toward the windows, toward the helicopter. "That thing out there," he scoffed. "You expect people to believe that's yours?" The room didn't react. Not with laughter, not with agreement. Just silence. Andre didn't respond. He didn't need to. The man in the suit stepped forward slightly. Not aggressive, not dramatic. Just enough to be seen. "Mr. Miller doesn't expect anything," he said calmly. "He doesn't need to." That line landed harder than Ryan's entire speech earlier, because it carried something real. Ryan turned sharply. "And who are you supposed to be?" he snapped. The man met his gaze evenly. "I'm the one who handles transitions when timing matters." That answer didn't clarify anything, but it didn't need to, because it wasn't for Ryan. It was for the room. The bartender leaned forward slightly, whispering to the coworker beside him. "Yo, I think that's legit." The coworker swallowed. "Man, no way." But the way they said it, it wasn't disbelief. It was realization catching up too fast. Ryan shook his head, laughing again, louder this time. Nah, this is crazy," he said. "You really think you can just walk in here, say a few lines, and flip the whole story?" Andre finally shifted. Not stepping forward, not stepping back, just straightening slightly, grounding himself. "You flipped it the moment you invited me," Andre said quietly. Ryan froze. "What?" he asked. Andre looked around the room, not avoiding anyone, not accusing, just seeing them. "You didn't want a reunion," he said. "You wanted a reminder." The words cut through the silence. Ryan's jaw tightened. Man, you don't get to... You wanted to show everyone, Andre continued, voice steady, that I was still who you decided I was. A few people looked down. Others shifted uncomfortably because they had laughed, they had watched, they had stayed silent. Ryan's voice rose. That's not... But you never checked, Andre said. That stopped him. Clean, sharp. Ryan blinked. Checked what? Andre held his gaze. Anything. The word echoed. Simple, but devastating. A man near the window muttered under his breath. He didn't... The bartender nodded slowly, eyes still locked on Andre. He never looked him up. And that realization spread. Fast, like something catching fire in dry air. Phones started coming out again, but not for recording, for searching, for verifying, for understanding. A woman near the bar typed quickly, her fingers moving faster with each second. Her eyes widened. Oh my God, she whispered. The man beside her leaned over. What? She turned the screen toward him. His face changed instantly. What? Someone else asked. The information moved faster than words. Screen to screen, face to face. Reactions spreading before explanations could catch up. Ryan looked around, confusion creeping into his expression. What? He demanded. What are y'all looking at? No one answered him directly, because they were looking at Andre now. Not the way they had before, not with amusement, not with dismissal, with something else. Recognition, fear, respect. Ryan turned back slowly. His eyes met Andre's again, but this time, they weren't equal. Because now, he wasn't sure who he was standing in front of. Andre didn't speak. Didn't need to. The truth was already moving through the room without him. The man in the suit stepped slightly closer again. Mr. Miller, he said quietly, we are on a very tight schedule. Andre nodded once. Give me a minute, he replied. The man stepped back. No argument. No urgency pushed onto him, because even time waited for Andre. Ryan's voice came out lower now. What is this? He asked. Not loud, not confident. Just uncertain. Andre looked at him. Not with satisfaction. Not with revenge. Just clarity. You spent 20 years thinking I stayed where you left me, Andre said. Ryan didn't respond, because now he wasn't sure that was true. Andre continued, I spent those same 20 years building something you never thought to look for. The words didn't hit like a reveal. They settled, because the room already knew. Already felt it, already saw it. The helicopter, the suits, the name on the side, the way people spoke to him. The way he never reacted. It all connected. Ryan took a step back, then another. The microphone lowered slowly in his hand, because whatever he had been trying to hold on to was gone. And the room, the same room that had laughed, was no longer behind him. It had shifted, fully, completely. Andre reached into his pocket again. Not for the key. Not yet, but the motion itself drew attention, because now every small detail mattered, every movement carried weight, every second stretched, and the truth, the full truth, was seconds away from being undeniable. When everything finally becomes clear, what does a man like Ryan have left to stand on? Ryan's hand trembled. Not enough for everyone to see. But enough. Enough for him to feel it. The microphone slipped slightly in his grip, the weight of it suddenly unfamiliar, like something he no longer knew how to use. Around him, the room had changed. Not just in attention, in allegiance. The same people who had laughed, who had nodded, who had followed his lead all night, were no longer looking at him the same way. They weren't backing him up. They weren't even pretending to. They were watching Andre, waiting. Ryan swallowed, forcing himself to speak. "All right," he said, voice lower now, less certain. "So what? You did all right for yourself. That's what this is?" Andre didn't answer immediately. He studied him, not as an enemy, not even as a rival, but as something smaller, something finished. Ryan's voice cracked just slightly as he continued. "You come back here to what? Make a point? Show everybody you made it?" Andre shook his head. "No," he said quietly. Ryan blinked. "No?" he repeated. Andre's eyes moved across the room, taking it in, the faces, the silence, the weight of what had just unfolded. "I didn't come back to take anything from you," he said. That landed softer than expected, but heavier. Ryan frowned. "Then why are you here?" he asked. The question wasn't sharp anymore. It wasn't aggressive. It was uncertain. Andre stepped forward slightly. Not enough to dominate the space. Just enough to be seen clearly. "I came back," he said, "because this place is part of my story." The room stilled. "Completely," Andre continued, his voice calm, measured. "There was a time when I thought nights like this would define me," he said. "That what happened here, what people said, what people chose not to say." His eyes paused briefly on a few faces in the crowd. "Would be the only version of me that mattered." A woman near the back lowered her gaze. The bartender leaned forward slightly, listening. Ryan didn't move, didn't interrupt. Because now, he couldn't. Andre took another breath. "But that wasn't the end," he said. "It was just the beginning of something nobody in this room ever saw." A long silence followed. Not empty, full. Full of everything people were starting to understand. Ryan let out a slow breath. "So what?" he said. "You want an apology?" The words sounded weak, even to him. Andre looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time, there was something like sadness there. Not for himself. For Ryan. "Sir, you already showed me who you are," Andre said. Ryan's jaw tightened. Andre continued. "You showed me back then," he said. "And you showed me again tonight." A pause. "I don't need anything from you." That was it. No anger, no demand, no need for validation. And that broke something in Ryan, because everything he had built his confidence on, the laughter, the control, the belief that he was above someone else, it all depended on reaction, on resistance, on someone pushing back. And Andre wasn't doing any of that. He wasn't fighting, he wasn't arguing. He was simply done. Ryan took a step back, then another. His voice came out quieter. "Man, I was just joking," he said. "You know how it is." No one laughed, no one agreed. The words fell flat. Andre didn't respond right away. He let the silence sit. Let it do the work. Then he said gently, "No, that was all." One word. But it carried everything. Ryan looked around the room again, searching, hoping, but there was nothing there for him now. No support, no echo, just faces that had turned away. The bartender looked down at the counter. The older couple sat still, hands folded. Kyle leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, avoiding eye contact. Ryan's shoulders dropped. For the first time all night, he looked small. Andre reached into his coat pocket. Slow. Deliberate. The room followed the movement. He pulled out the folded $20 bill, the same one that had been handed to him earlier. Mocking, dismissive. Andre unfolded it carefully, smoothed it out between his fingers. Then he held it up, just enough for people nearby to see. This, he said, was given to me tonight. His voice stayed calm, steady. Not as help, he added, as a reminder of what someone thought I was worth. Ryan's face tightened. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Andre looked at the bill for a moment, then back at the room. I'll keep it, he said. A pause. As a reminder of what people choose to believe when they don't know the full story. He folded it again, neatly, and slipped it back into his pocket. No anger, no pride, just clarity. The man in the suit stepped forward slightly again. Mr. Miller, he said, we're ready. Andre nodded. Then he turned. Not toward Ryan, not toward the crowd, but toward the exit. The path opened instantly. No hesitation, no resistance, because now everyone understood. Or at least, they understood enough. Andre paused for just a moment near the doorway. He glanced back. Not long. Just a second. Long enough to see the room as it was now. Quiet. Still. Changed. Then he walked out. The doors opened. The light from outside poured in, brighter than before, washing over the floor. And for a moment, the entire room stood frozen, because the man they had laughed at had never needed their approval, and never would. When someone walks away with dignity instead of revenge, what does that say about who really won? The doors closed softly behind Andre. The sound barely echoed, but it felt like something final. For a long moment, no one inside the rooftop bar moved. No one spoke. The music had stopped without anyone noticing. The lights still glowed warm and gold, but they no longer felt inviting. They felt exposed, like everything in that room had been seen too clearly. Outside, the helicopter blades turned slower now, the steady rhythm easing into a quieter hum. The beam of light softened, no longer searching, no longer sweeping, just holding its place. Inside, Ryan stood where he had been left. Alone. Not physically. The room was still full, but the distance between him and everyone else had never been wider. The microphone hung loosely in his hand before slipping entirely, hitting the floor with a dull thud that made a few people flinch. No one bent to pick it up. Kyle shifted against the wall, arms still crossed, but his posture had changed. Less confident, less certain. He avoided Ryan's eyes, staring instead at the floor like it held answers he didn't want to face. The bartender exhaled slowly, setting the towel down for good this time. Man, he muttered, shaking his head. That wasn't what I thought it was. The older couple sat quietly, hands folded, watching the door Andre had just walked through. The woman's eyes were wet, though she hadn't said a word. A phone buzzed somewhere in the room. Then another. Screens lit up, notifications, messages, search results still open, reality settling in fully now. "Oh my God," someone whispered near the bar. "It's real," another voice said. A man scrolled quickly, his eyes widening. "Axiom Digital. He's the founder." The words spread again. Faster this time. No resistance, no denial, because now there was proof, clear, public, undeniable. Ryan heard it. Every word, every confirmation, every piece of truth he had never bothered to look for. His shoulders dropped. just slightly at first, then more. He turned slowly toward the windows, toward the helicopter, toward the name he had laughed at just minutes ago. Axiom Digital Systems. It didn't look different. It hadn't changed. Only his understanding had. And that made it feel heavier. A woman near the center of the room set her drink down carefully, the glass barely making a sound. "We all saw it," she said quietly. "We all heard what you said." No one responded, because she wasn't wrong. This wasn't just about Ryan anymore. It was about the room, the laughter, the silence, the choice not to speak. Ryan swallowed, his throat dry. "I didn't know," he said, barely above a whisper. The words felt small the moment they left his mouth, because they were. The bartender looked up, meeting his eyes for the first time all night. "You didn't try to know," he said. That landed harder, because it was true. Ryan didn't respond. He couldn't. The truth had already moved past him. Outside, the helicopter door closed with a soft, controlled click. A moment later, the blades picked up again. Slow, steady, purposeful. People turned back toward the glass, not out of curiosity anymore, out of something else. Respect. The beam of light lifted slightly as the aircraft prepared to rise. Inside, no one spoke. No one made a joke. No one reached for their phone to record. Because this moment, this one, wasn't for entertainment. It was something else entirely. The helicopter lifted gently from the ground, the grass below flattening in soft circles beneath it. The city lights caught along its edges, reflecting in quiet flashes. Andre wasn't visible from this angle, but his presence, it was still there, in the silence, in the shift, in the way the room no longer felt the same. The aircraft rose higher, the sound growing stronger again before slowly fading as it moved away from the rooftop. People watched until it disappeared, until the sky swallowed it whole. Only then did the room begin to move again. Slow, uneven, like everyone was relearning how to exist in a space that had just shown them something they couldn't ignore. The older couple stood first. The man placed a small bill on the table, more than enough, and gently guided his wife toward the exit. The bartender picked up the fallen microphone, setting it back on the stage without a word. Kyle pushed himself off the wall, but instead of going to Ryan, he walked toward the opposite side of the room. Distance. That's what everyone was choosing now. Ryan remained where he was. The center of the room no longer felt like his. It felt empty. A table nearby caught his eye. The paper, still there. Most likely still broke. It hadn't moved, hadn't changed, but now it looked different. Not like a joke, not like a win, like evidence. Ryan stepped toward it slowly, picked it up. His fingers tightened around the edges, the cheap cardstock bending under the pressure. He stared at it, at the words he had chosen, the label he had tried to fix onto someone else. And for the first time, he saw it for what it really was. Not power, not control, just small. His hand loosened. The paper slipped from his grip, falling back onto the table. No one reached for it. No one wanted it. Because now, it didn't belong to Andre anymore. It belonged to the moment, the lesson, the truth that had been revealed. The room emptied slowly. Conversations stayed quiet. Eyes stayed lowered. Each person carrying something different out with them. Regret. Realization. Or maybe just a question they hadn't asked themselves before. Ryan was one of the last to leave. He paused at the door, looked back once, at the space, at the table, at the place where everything had changed. Then he walked out, alone. The lights inside dimmed slightly as the night wound down. Chairs were reset, glasses cleared. The rooftop returned to what it had been before, almost, because something had shifted, and it wasn't going back. Far above the city, the helicopter moved through the dark sky, steady and controlled, carrying Andre forward. Not away from something, but toward everything he had built. He sat inside quietly, looking out over the lights below. No smile, no celebration, just reflection. The folded bill still rested in his pocket. The memory of that room still fresh, not as something that defined him, but as something that reminded him of where he started, of what he endured, of what he chose not to become, and of the truth that had always been there, waiting. Value isn't given by a room. It isn't decided by a crowd. It isn't defined by what people say when they think you're nothing. It's built, quietly, over time, in moments no one sees. And one day, whether people expect it or not, it speaks for itself. So tell me, have you ever stood in a room where people had already decided who you were? And if you had the chance to walk back into that room, would you prove them wrong? Or would you let your life do it for you? When Andre Miller quietly folded that most likely still broke card and walked out under the glow of his own helicopter, he didn't just leave the room. He left their judgment behind him. And in that silence, everyone else was forced to finally see who they had been all along. This story isn't about proving people wrong. It's about the cost of deciding who someone is without ever trying to know them. Because sometimes the biggest mistake isn't what you say. It's what you choose to believe about someone before they ever get a chance to speak. So next time you meet someone like Andre, pause before you decide their story for them. One moment of respect, just one, could mean more than you'll ever realize. Have you ever been in a room where people had already made up their minds about you? Comment 00 if you've lived that moment. Or 1 if this story hit you harder than you expected. And trust me, the next story I'm about to share will make you question everything you think you know about first impressions.